This is part 2 of the Warren Files, The Haunting of the Perron Family. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, go check that out now. And if you have, let's continue on with the case.
But yeah, so back to the case. Legend has it that Bathsheba turned into stone when she died. So she turned into a whole stone.
Like a gray,
like a whole gray stone. Hard as a rock. She's a rock, but she's a person. Or
Oh
she's
my
a
god.
witch, but she's a demon.
Like a gargoyle almost.
Gargoyle. She's a little Halloween Town 2 Calabar's Revenge. She's
Oh
a
my
little
god.
cinematic.
Oh no, yeah, that does happen in that movie. They're like the whole time.
I need a
That's
little
so weird.
rewatch of those movies. The only one I wasn't really a fan of was the college. Was it in college or was it high school?
The college one?
No, it was college. Was it not the third one?
See, I must have bad taste because I kind of like the college
No,
one.
well they got rid of the actual Marnie. Like
Yeah. Well, yeah, that sucked, but I thought the storyline of that one was really good.
Yeah, I just didn't like that it was a new person. I was
Yeah,
like, why did they
and
do
they
that?
try to pass it off.
They're like, it's her. I'm like, it's literally not though.
It looks nothing like her, like at all.
Do you know the original person that played Marnie?
Mm.
Like married the villain in that movie?
I did
like
hear
they're
about
married,
that.
they're on TikTok and they're so stinking cute. I can't handle it.
That's so cute. I love that.
But they ended up together.
Aww.
But this Bathsheba just turned into stone. She didn't have no love.
I feel like that's such a big thing in pop culture. Like you see that stuff, like
turning into stone.
Yeah, I feel like there's a show or movie I'm thinking of where like they're just like flying in the air and they get shot with like a ray gun that turns them to stone. You know what I'm talking
Was
about?
it a cartoon? I feel like
Yeah, it's a cartoon. I don't know what it
was
is.
this? No, I can see it too. We're gonna do some digging after this because there's definitely something that's from.
Yeah. I feel like that's the hardest part about the show. I'll get like a random inkling of like a pop culture thing with the case, and like my brain can't scratch it.
It's like, what the heck is that from? So, some people say she turned into stone, but others believe that she had a rare type of paralysis, and that's what most likely caused this. So, some people think it was stone. Some people think she was like actually paralyzed. So, like, because she was paralyzed, her body was very stiff, and that's what they mean by stone. But some people believe like actual stone. So
that is like that is even weird, even if like it was like a paralyzed thing, like if she just like had a paralysis moment.
Yeah,
like everything that happened up until that point, those sequence of events, that's still weird. Like I think that's what makes this case so interesting, because in a true crime aspect it's weird, but in a paranormal aspect it's even more weird.
Like if you were to be like a normal person living your life and you saw someone going through all of this, I don't know how you could rationalize all of this stuff together. Like you could rationalize, oh, she just became paralyzed before she died.
Yeah, exactly.
But like literally everything else that happened, it's like,
it's like, what does that even mean?
Well, you can't rationalize something crazy and dark like that.
Exactly.
But so for most aspects of Sherman's story, it appears more likely than supernatural. That's why she turned into a stone. That's why she became paralyzed. So a lot of people, and I believe that's true because it makes sense for this entire scenario.
Yeah.
It's all supernatural.
Yeah, I can see the stone thing.
I'm
Team Stone.
I'm Team Stone.
Team
We get
Stone.
t-shirts. Team Stone. So yeah, that's a whole little backstory of Miss Bathsheba Sherman and all that kind of stuff. Wow. But now we're going to get into an interview with Andrea Perron, the daughter.
Ooh, okay.
And this will have information we might have heard before a little bit, but a lot of it's like her take on what happened and
a
that
more
kind of
like
stuff.
in-depth take.
Yeah, it's more in depth of like her
hearing.
experiences and like some of the stories and that kind of stuff. So let's get into it. So let's try to imagine. I'm gonna take you to a little place. Close your eyes, if you will.
Oh, don't do that. I'll take a nap right
here. You said sleepy time. Imagine your childhood home, the sunny kitchen opening onto a sitting room, your whole family laughing, smiling as you eat Dad's Sunday pancakes. Summer trips to the ice cream shop and rolling down the green hill outside the back door that leads into the forest. The TV flickering as you watch the Brady Bunch after homework. Brushing your teeth in the upstairs bathroom with your sister before bed. The mirror creaking open on its hinge to reveal the dark hallway behind you.
Oh.
Steps on the stairs creaking. Closer. Working on school projects with Mom. It's a whole thing. Plugging your nose to block out the constant smell of rotting flesh.
Well, that took a turn.
Yeah,
all right.
Just girly things. So, the temperature dropping 50 degrees in a moment. Your entire family catching sleeping spells so powerful and so frequent you make peace just before passing out on the floor. Not being able to take a bath without invisible hands trying to drown you.
What?
So there's a lot of stuff. This is, like, really setting up. These are things that actually happened to this.
That, like, happened to her
yeah.
and, like, the family. Oh, my God.
But I just want to paint a picture, so keep imagining.
Sleeping spells.
Getting drowned in your bathtub. The same hands dragging you from your bed in the middle of the night down 2 flights of stairs into the basement. Hysterical shrieks erupting from the same empty basement. Famous psychics trying to exorcise a murderous spirit out of your mother. And, you know, cake and ice cream stuff on your birthday, you know? Still got the fun stuff. But mostly demons. This was a childhood home of Andrea Perron, who for 10 years lived in what is now considered one of America's most famous haunted homes. If you're already familiar, and we are with this because of the Conjuring movies. This family of 7 fought to survive the vengeful attacks of the spirit Bathsheba, who haunted their rural home. So Juan based the film on the real experiences. And it was based on Roger, the father, Carolyn, and here's the other daughters. They're Andrea, Nancy, Cindy, Christine, and April, who from 19... Wow. So, yeah, there's a lot of siblings here.
5 sisters.
5 sisters, and they're all experiencing the same thing. Good luck, Charlie.
Wow.
So they got that sibling bond we talked about. They got that love. So, they lived in this house from 1970 to 1980. So, 10 years they spent inside of this house. So you can only imagine what kind of stuff went down, considering the stuff we've already talked about. And they lived among the dead in the Arnold Estate, a deeply haunted farmhouse built in Rhode Island, sticks in 1736. One of the daughters, Christine, says a lot of what happened in the house was scarier than the movie because it was true. Oh. So Andrea is the most generous, acknowledging that they did the best they could, trying to compress 10 years into 2 hours. So, like, a lot of stuff they showed in the movie wasn't even, like...
There's no possible way you could do all of that in 2 hours.
It was 10 years of absolute chaos.
Which is why they have a whole movie franchise now.
Which is why, although I don't believe that all the movies aren't based on this experience, but...
Is it only the first movie?
Yeah, this is only the first movie.
Wow, I'm surprised they didn't try to do, like a sequel or...
Well, maybe they did. I feel like this is the only one, now that I'm thinking of it.
I don't know how you would feel about this, because I know reboots are, like, a huge thing, but if they were ever to do a reboot of the Conjuring series...
or they just did, like, an actual, like, TV series.
Yeah, this should be either a TV series or, like, a trilogy.
Yeah, that's, like,
I could see that going over really well,
it could be good, and they can even get into more of Bathsheba, because I feel like there's also
There's a whole case... Is there, like, a monster case made for her, or is it just, like,
I think she's, like, mentioned in the movie, but... A lot of people are upset that she doesn't play as big of a role in it, considering all of this.
In this case you've talked to me about, she's, like, way more interesting, I feel like, than what they try to make it seem like in the movie.
Like, I don't think she's fully fleshed out. Like, you see, like, bits, like, you see her in the tree, like, outside of the house, but you don't really get a full understanding of what exactly she did completely. So, like, people wanted to have more of, like, let's see Bathsheba type thing.
Also, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but, like, isn't this, like, Bathsheba kind of giving you, like, Fear Street vibes, like the movie trilogy?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's giving me the big, like, witch with the tree.
The third one, they had the witches?
Yeah, they were,
1770.
Well, this is giving me, like, the summer camp one, too, like, how there's, like, the tree, like...
Yeah.
That was, like, the original, like, witch, like... execution plays. It's giving me all that kind of vibe.
You see, that makes a lot of sense considering the way it jumps in time. I know the 70s is earlier than what the second movie in the Fear Street trilogy was. I think that was 80s. But, like, if they were to do some sort of thing like how they did the Fear Street movies,
I think the summer camp one is the 70s.
Is it? Okay, then yeah.
I think it is, yeah.
So they could potentially make a trilogy like that that's based on, like you said. So it would make a lot of
sense.
It's
like maybe like a 10 to 20 year jump. That's like a major difference, but still.
This would be really good. So, they compressed all of that into 2 hours in a movie, so obviously they're not going to be able to cover everything, obviously.
Wow, imagine, like, you don't like the book. Imagine,
being Andrea and being like, oh, they showed a little bit. They showed the possession thing.
They showed a blank.
They showed that. So, after speaking to Andrea Perron at length about her time in that house, it's clear that The Conjuring grossly misrepresents the parents' experiences, which in many cases were both more surreal and more banal than any film can actually really capture. But I must say, this is coming from the author, but I must say, the compression of 10 years into 2 hours no longer strikes me as a poor representation of the traumatic, hallucinogenic, time-bending effects of what living in a state of constant exposure to things that are impossible to comprehend.
Yeah.
So, like, can you imagine growing up in such, like, a crazy time in your life and, like, having to understand all these hallucinogenic effects?
And then only people are focusing on the exorcism that happened.
Yeah, like, that's gonna mess up your brain.
No, like, that's caused, like, personal, like, trauma. Like 10 years of it too.
Like trying to comprehend all of that.
Being in like fight or flight mode for that long in a place you have to stay in.
Yeah, even like the parents, like regardless, like the kids obviously are going to be messed up from that, but the parents too. Like you're living in that state all the time, especially
and you're the caregiver too.
Yeah. Like,
what about like the mom too? She was the one who like had that experience happen to her.
Well, she had to go through the experience of what it's like to be possessed.
Wow.
Like that's not just one little day thing. Like your energy's going to be depleted. Like it even talked about their energy being taken from them. So this is a quote. It says, "We had days that felt like years and months that just slipped by," Andrea says. "We never knew if it was 1976 or if it was 1842 or if it was 1780. There was a swirling sense of timelessness to living in that house." So just weird time understandings in that house. That's scary. Imagine like casually us now being like, it feels like it's 1700, not knowing the year. Like that's going to be crazy.
Yeah. No, it would be scary for anyone.
So there's like this whole swirling sense of timelessness. The vast majority of stories about supernatural phenomena are stories of containment. The wrong closet door is opened and a ghost is awoken. The ghost must be put back to sleep.
Ugh.
Yeah, a young woman,
they have like rituals to try to keep like them happy.
Keep the ghosts at bay. So a young woman gets possessed by a demon. The demon must be exorcised. But what if you couldn't escape or contain them? What if you lived alongside them for 10 full years from 12 to 21? Some of the most crucial years in cognitive development, never getting used to them, experiencing shock after incomprehensible shock that not even the most mentally adroit adult could process. So obviously we've talked about this. They're not going to be able to process all this information. The Perron family, Roman Catholics, had not been predisposed to believe in ghosts. Andrea said the only time we heard about that word was in church, the Holy Ghost. So they didn't really know what ghosts were. They just thought the Holy Ghost is the only understanding they had. So that changed almost as soon as they moved into the house on January 11th, 1971. "Things happened right away," said Andrea, who recounted seeing a full-bodied apparition that looked like flesh and blood to her. And she said good morning to him. The thing she saw, she literally said good morning.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Oh my god, like she would talk to it like, "Hey, good morning. Like, how are you?"
But
is that every day?
This was just her first experience seeing something. But I'm like, how was she so casual saying good morning to him?
Well, do you think like she thought it was like a sibling or like her dad? Like could it have been like?
It said that she saw a full body like flesh and it looked like flesh and blood standing before her. But she must not have been scared.
So it looked demonic. Almost.
I guess so. But I'm wondering why she wasn't scared at all seeing that. Unless she thought it was her imagination, but even then, well, I guess it's just weird because they had no understanding of ghosts. Like, what did they think that was?
I don't know. Like, not to sound kind of crazy like her, almost in this sense, but just sometimes, like, if you see something that like crazy, you're gonna go like the humor route, or even just kind of like try to be calm with it. Yeah. Because like, what can you really do? Like, if you see something like that. Like, if we walked out of your building right now, we saw Vecna or something, like, not like Vecna, like, in the sense of, like, in Stranger Things, but, like, that kind of idea, because that's what I'm seeing right now, like, the flesh and blood kind of look. What would you even, like, say? You would, like, if you run and, like, scream, it's like, that's gonna make it worse. Like, if you're just like, oh, hi. Hello.
Good morning.
Like, hi. Like, if you're saying good morning as you're walking to, like, get to the door, like, I don't know. It just seems like that's the way her body responded to something terrifying.
Like, the only understanding I have of that is, like, when you and I walked past what we thought was the downtown witch when we lived downtown. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, so go check it out. But we saw this woman look like a witch, and she was very scary on the side of the road, and just very odd things about her.
We were, like, very cool and collected.
Yeah, and then we got inside, and we were like, what was that? And we looked out the window and she was gone. Like, she just wasn't standing where she was standing. Her hair was blowing a weird way when there was no wind. It was a whole experience. But I'm imagining something like that. Like, I would just be like, what? And I'd try to walk away and get away from the situation as fast as I could. But, like, this girl, she's like, good morning. But I guess that's her response.
That is
but it just simply would not be mine. Simply would not. So, another quote is, "I always got along with the spirits right from the start," she said. "I had moments of fear because I saw what was happening to my mom and to my family." So Andrea's experience was fairly positive from this point. Like, she got along with them, and it was fine. I'm like, but you weren't concerned at all? I mean, maybe it presented itself in a way that was more inviting to her, that she understands.
It's flesh and...
I know, but it's just also strange that she had an understanding of, like, a poor experience happening to her mom and her family, but she was fine with it because it was nice to her. That's weird.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that would, like, twist you up as, like, a kid, like, feeling
it's like, but they're nice to me. Like, I know they're flesh and blood, but I like them. They're my friends, like, that kind of vibe. So, she said different members of the family had different experiences living in the house, which is why only Nancy and her father joined her for this weekend. Quote, "We were the ones who never wanted to leave." And so the interviewers asked, so what happened this weekend? Because I believe they went back to the house in this interview.
Right.
Andrea said that they heard from a number of spirits through a spirit box. So they had set up a whole session with Andrea and her father and maybe a couple more of her siblings. So they set up a spirit box, and it was sort of a high-powered radio receiver that occasionally renders white noise static and intelligible words. So it helps create words from static.
Makes words come from it, yeah.
Yeah. So Andrea said that they made contact with April. She was right there, she said. Other spirits were saying her name. That was the only message investigators received. So for those who don't know, April is one of the sisters. She passed away when she was a little bit older. And we'll get into more of what happened exactly, but she believes that April was right there.
Oh, wow. She stayed at the house, too.
I believe
it went American Horror Story vibes, too.
Yeah.
Like, murder house.
It's like, what? Or she believed it was April. April was nearby.
Like, all the ghosts come back to that house. Ooh.
Don't like that. So that was not the only message investigators received. The only thing that came through over and over last night was the word weep, said Andrea, as they did the thing. So others interpreted that as the spirits trying to make Andrea cry, she said, but added, I don't think that they were. She said that after she, quote, dwelled among the dead for a decade, she has a different perspective on such losses. When I spoke to Andrea Perron, I don't know what to think of what happened. I want to know how it felt, and how those 10 harrowing years have continued to haunt her family, long after they left the farmhouse. Andrea now lives in Florida with her father and her dog that she calls my darling Peanut Butter Cup. These 50 years hence, she says, deep into our first conversation, just talking about it almost for me is like being there again. I'm there right now as I'm telling you these stories, she said. So you might attribute that to the trilogy of books Perron published between 2011 and 2014 about her family's time in the Arnold estate. So I actually wanted to get these books, but I didn't have the chance. What?
It's a trilogy. I literally just said, someone should do a trilogy. Wow.
She made trilogy books.
Wow.
So
she was on the money.
If someone could just go to those books. I really wanted to read them before, but I couldn't find them in time. So that was part of the reason I wanted to do more research, but I was unable to get them. So yeah, she wrote a trilogy, and it was all about her family's time in the Arnold estate. The meticulous, granular degree of historical reconstruction achieved in the House of Darkness, House of Lights books was made possible only through years of grueling self-reflection, group interview, comparative analysis between individual accounts, and archival research. But Perron attributes her recall to something else, childhood trauma. And as with a smirk, the gift that keeps on giving. So she makes light of the whole situation now.
Yeah.
It took 25 years after leaving the house, all the while holding painful memories at bay, for Perron to be able to return to her childhood and ask what really happened. She says, I remember as I wrote these stories, revisiting these terrifying experiences over and over and over again, that at some point it felt like self-punishment. It didn't feel cathartic to me. It felt abusive at times, that I was literally forcing myself to remember things that I had spent decades trying to forget. So in the process of writing these books, it's almost like she had to force herself to relive this stuff. So like, it almost like re-traumatized her.
I can't even imagine, because like she probably had such vivid images, which probably makes the book even all that better. Is that like she had to relive this, and it's just like, oh my god, I remember what that felt like.
Like imagine trying to push that stuff away and like talk through it in therapy to try to not keep remembering it, but like it was almost like torture writing this stuff down. But
no, and you mentioned the thing about how like she had to make like light about all this. I feel like you almost have to like keep going and like live your life. And
I'm happy that she has since like found peace with all of this and is trying to find the calm comedic side. And it's like, hey, when I was little, this chaotic stuff happened.
No, exactly.
So Andrea is the first to admit that among the 7 Perrons, she may have had it the easiest haunting-wise. She said, I developed a cordial kind of simpatico relationship with the spirits, where I was not attacked. So clearly she had a very different experience than everyone else, experiencing actual demons. I was communicated with, but that's different, she said. It was her mother and her younger sister, Cindy, who took the brunt of it.
Ooh.
Cindy, who today is a wide-eyed and wise, utterly sincere person, was among her sisters the most frequent victim of the home's malevolence, being dragged out of bed and down the stairs by an unseen hand.
Whoa.
Waking up to a broken-necked apparition whispering, "Come to me, little girl," and a drowning attempt so violent that Andrea didn't put it in the book, and Andrea is quoted saying, "Cindy doesn't take baths anymore." So the fact that, like, that whole experience was so, like,
with
awful,
the whole hands thing, right? You were talking about earlier,
yeah,
how the hands,
it
like...
pushed her down in the bathtub.
Oh my
like,
god, that was to Cindy.
Yeah, to Cindy. It was so traumatic that Andrea couldn't even put it in the book because it freaked her out too bad.
Yeah,
and
no,
like,
I can't imagine.
Can you imagine? Like, she was able to talk about, like, the seance and everything with her mom being possessed, but, like,
oh my god,
the bathtub was way too much. Can you imagine? That would...
Yeah, and baths are supposed to be just so, like, relaxing, cathartic, and imagine, like, it's so quiet in the house, and just all of a sudden you feel this thing.
Like, you feel the most
down.
vulnerable, and then you're literally getting pushed down in the bathtub.
Yeah, no,
That's
exactly.
horrifying.
That would be so scary for anyone.
Yeah, so she says, like, Cindy doesn't take baths anymore because
Yeah.
she's so afraid. I'm like, I wouldn't.
Oh god, I'm probably not gonna be able to take a bath the next couple of days.
You have the lights off and
this.
a candle, and you're like, what if?
This is so dumb, but I get scared. A shark's gonna be in there or something, or like a snake in like a little bathtub.
Snake,
I can't
can
imagine.
Understand. A shark? What shark's coming through your drain?
I don't know. Maybe like a baby one.
When I was little, I was scared I was gonna go down the bathtub drain, and I'd be so scared.
You're small enough that it could happen. You're tiny enough, you could fall down the drain.
See, I'm telling you, when I was little, I feel like you can definitely see the anxiety in my really stupid fears. I was afraid of going down the drain when I was little, like.
If you were even a little bit slippery, you would slip through there.
I'd slip right through that cracks.
Yeah, if you were greased up, you'd go right through the drain.
I'd slip right through. I also had a fear of stairs that had, like, gaps between them, because I was afraid I was gonna slip down and fall and die.
That's a valid fear.
But, like, what child fears silly thing? Or I was afraid of icicles. I was afraid they would stab me and kill me.
I just feel like that would set so much paranoia in someone, like what they were going through.
Especially a bath. I'm like, you wouldn't be able to take a bath after that. No wonder she can't. Like, something like that pushing you down. Who's to say it's not going to happen again, regardless if you don't live in the house? What if?
No, it's terrifying.
What if? Like, the what if is too much to actually handle.
Yeah, no, like I know this happened and it might not happen again when I take a bath, but what if it does?
Yeah, what if
like,
it does?
Too traumatic. Even like taking a shower, I feel would still feel like some kind of way.
Some kind of way, and it says like Andrea says solemnly she takes showers. She was only 14 years old when it happened. And it traumatized her so badly that it's not something that we could talk about. So, like, her sister won't even talk about it today because she's so scared. And now she just showers.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Even then, though, just, like, being in any type of body of water, like, I would just, wow.
Exactly. Any body of water. That's horrifying. So, that broken-necked spirit was, without competition, the most malignant entity in the Arnold estate. And it made Carolyn its adversary for 10 long years, the mother. The resilient Perron matriarch withstood the most brutal and the most personalized abuse in the house. Gruesome attacks that had distinctly sadistic emotional undercurrent. Often she would appear to Carolyn at dawn, stopping the clock dead at 5:15, and terrorize her with sights like a hand with the skin flayed off. Ew. Logan, that freaks me out so bad, because remember, I told this on the sleep paralysis episode, but that woman I saw in the bathroom my freshman year with her skin peeling off?
It sounds very similar to that.
I don't like that vibe.
Oh my gosh, I think we've talked about another demon on the podcast before that's been similar to that, of what you saw.
Just like the flayed off skin.
Oh my god.
But the fact that she would see that is horrifying. So, however hard Carolyn tried to wave her husband, he would not. I think, Andrea ventures, that because when Cindy was 2 months old, she had to go through a major surgery and they lost her briefly on the table. And because when my mother was younger, she too had a near-death experience where she left her body, that was when the demon, or whatever it was, had marked them. So Cindy and the mother had been marked because of their close encounters with death, like so close that like they think that they left their body momentarily enough for something to mark them, to kill them.
Whoa.
So I think that they took the brunt of it because they had been to the other side and they were recognized as such. They had literally transformed into spirit ever so briefly, is what Andrea said. So it makes sense that like something like that would have taken over in that brief time and like just stayed with them because they were vulnerable and briefly away from their body. Their soul was.
No, yeah, exactly. Like that's just that goes back to the whole thing we talked about with like the mom too, like how she like pulled out of her body and like came back and like was probably in so much pain again. Like that is just
like it's just creepy that it latched onto them, especially like the mom, like so deeply. But despite all of this, Andrea's relationship to the house today is oddly warm.
Oh.
Even effusively positive. She calls it, quote, the only home I've ever known. But she doesn't blame Cindy and Christine for staying away from the house. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most saddest, most profound legacies of the Arnold haunting of the Perron family. Through the process of Andrea's research period for the books, it brought the family together and streamlined their various experiences into one cohesive account. The first few years of the house saw wedges driven between them all. Cindy calls it the bubble. Andrea says that the spirit's ability to isolate members of the family from one another by subjecting them to horrors that could never be corroborated. So they were often left disrupted or simply unsaid. So a lot of the stories, like, they didn't even share when they were younger, it sounds like. It sounds like when Andrea went to go write these books, everyone kept coming forward with all of these stories that happened that they kept to themselves for a long time.
Oh my gosh,
and, like, I'm sure parts of it they would share at the time, but some of the stuff...
Like, too scared to talk to another sibling about, and then it's like, wait, I experienced that too. I thought I was the crazy one.
So, I think there definitely was talk of, like, what had happened at the time, but obviously coming forward later in life and everyone telling all of their accounts...
Like, it all was adding up. Like, the math was mathing.
The math was quite literally mathing. And it's just weird they would isolate all the siblings so they felt so alone, so it could attack them at their most vulnerable, and they all felt alone, so they felt like they couldn't tell the extent of it to their siblings. You know what I mean?
No, I can't imagine having to deal with that.
I think it also goes back to what we talked about earlier, how it really adds to the point that it is a very factual thing that probably happened to all of them.
Yeah, no, it, like, all lines up.
It all lines up because this isn't just Andrea's story. This is Cindy. This is every single sister. This is their mother. Yeah. This is their father, even though he didn't want to believe it. Like, they all had different accounts that made sense with all of this.
Wow.
So, they were often left disrupted or simply unsaid, all of these different things. Roger, the father's frequent absence from the home while traveling for work, he owned a jewelry manufacturing business, if you're interested.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Combined with rational, masculine disbelief of the unseen and unexplainable, encouraged a culture of secrecy among the girls. So, literally, all the women in the house felt isolated because the father was trying to make them feel dumb, because he wanted to be masculine. There's nothing wrong with the house, like how you see
like,
every
trope. I'm a big guy.
Yeah, every trope you'll see in like a modern horror movie of the man.
Like,
it's just an old house. There's not ghosts. I literally threatened Benjamin. I'm like, if you ever try to act like there's no ghosts here, I will beat you. I'm like, you better believe me. If we ever buy a house and I say it's haunted, we're not living there.
Yeah, no, you're like, I will go to stay at the local Comfort Inn before doing any of that.
I'm like, I don't care if we sign the papers. We will sell that house right away, or we will stay somewhere else until it's sold. Like, I don't play with that kind of stuff. So,
like, I do not play.
So he knows, but then again, he's not a toxic, masculine human. So.
Aww.
He's not toxic, unlike Roger. Literally making his...
You're really doubling down on Mr. Roger right now.
I just can't stand that, like, literally, he made all of his kids and his wife feel so stupid that they had to act secretive about this crazy stuff that was happening. He made them feel more alone than they needed to feel.
You see in, like, some shows, like, too, and, like, that they can't, like, get rid of the house. Like, in a Murder House, too, that was, like, a big thing. They wanted to get out, but it was, like, we've already, like, put so much effort into it.
They don't have a place to stay. I'm just like, can you not find anyone to stay with? I'd stay with a friend. I'm like, I don't care if you don't want me here. I'm not getting possessed. So I will pay you when I have money.
Yeah.
Getting this house sold. But, like, I don't want any of that. But it probably was harder because I had so many kids. But still, 10 years in this house.
Oh, no, I can't imagine.
But for the first few years, it was terrible. No one was honest about the hauntings, and it affected us all, Andrea said. So, like, no one was really talking about it, so everyone was kind of suffering all together, and no one knew why everyone was suffering, except the person it was directly happening to at the time.
Right.
So, the haunting also accelerated a division that the turbulent 70s had already opened between Roger and Carolyn. Andrea remembers the arguments that would break out each night and her mother crying. So the spirits seized on that splinter, flocking to negative energy like moths to flame. So most of these, we'll probably get more into it, but most of like these arguments between Roger and Carolyn was like political stuff that was happening at the time, and they had conflicting views, and he was very aggressive about his beliefs.
Yeah.
So it often left her feeling very isolated and like threatened by him to the point that she would cry, and like the kids can see there was clearly something wrong there.
Whoa.
So obviously that's going to lead to her being more vulnerable and obviously more susceptible to these things.
I feel like I brought this up in other episodes before, but again, this reminds me of like the Shining kind of stuff too. Like, especially because you mentioned before about them going into like sleep spells and stuff. Doesn't that happen in the Shining, or is that another thing I'm thinking of?
I'm trying to think.
Maybe it is in the Conjuring
There's like
movies.
one brief moment that I can say he goes into sleep spell of Danny.
Does the Conjuring movie have them sleeping at all? Like, going into
maybe
sleep
getting
spells?
tired. I haven't seen the movie in a hot second. I know, fake fan. But I've seen it many times.
Oh.
But I feel like there's something specific I'm thinking of as well. It probably happened in The Conjuring, but there's another specific
like
thing.
Going into sleep spells, because I feel like that's even like a trope in like horror movies, like falling asleep and having those possessions or like those monsters happen to you.
I've seen it in like the show The Haunting. Like one of the most recent I've watched a ton of the show The Haunting, but one of the most recent episodes shows like the family, like the son and the mother becoming so tired and falling asleep out of nowhere for hours at a time.
Wow.
And it's because like their energy is literally being taken from them by this thing. So it probably is popular in a bunch of other stuff too, but that's the most thing I can cite right now. But crazy. But yeah, no one was talking about the hauntings and then all the stuff between Roger and Carolyn. So the spirits seized on the splinter, flocking to the negative flame, while Carolyn's sanity was worn to the bones by visits from the broken-necked spirit. So like all this stuff is happening, and then Carolyn is seeing this like horrifying bent neck lady, which I just keep coming back. I can't believe like how many of these crazy tropes are seen in pop culture.
Yeah.
Like this is literally a Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, I'm literally getting imagery of like a woman like this and just like contortioned head or something.
It's just crazy.
Something just so
It's like a lot of these have been seen in pop culture, and like especially the bent neck lady.
Don't a lot of people refer to like this case and just like The Conjuring in general as like honestly sometimes like the horror movie?
Yeah.
Like
this. Amityville Horror is another one, which we'll get into that in a different episode, but like...
Is Amityville Horror the one that has sleep spells in it? Because doesn't he like fall asleep sometimes and then he's like goes bananas?
Yeah, he does, and he like isolates himself. And
that's what I'm
there's
thinking of.
There's like ghosts talking to him to tell him to kill his family. Like there's a bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah, okay, it's Amityville Horror I'm thinking of then that does the sleep spell stuff too.
So there's like a lot of horrifying stories like that, but that will be another episode, so stay tuned for that. But, let's see. Roger was actually experiencing his own visits. So after he's gone through this entire thing of saying, like, making them feel stupid, he's also actually having experiences that he's not manning up to.
Right.
So when Roger was alone, he would feel hands at the small of his back and hear sweet nothings whispered.
Sweet nothings? Like they're singing Sweet Nightingale? Like,
Sweet nothings is like what like a lover would whisper in your ear.
Oh.
Like sweet like
it's not a beautiful
it's
hymnal.
It's not cute sweet. It's like not, hey type sweet.
It's like, oh, your muscles
sweet
are so
You're
strong.
so beautiful. Like
it's more demonic, like your muscles are so strong.
It's making him feel like a toxic man.
Oh my god.
So we hear these sweet nothings whispered on the wind and like feel something touching the bottom of his back. So ghost hunters who have visited the house over the years all tend to insist that this entity is the spirit of a former resident we've talked about, Bathsheba Sherman. So that claim was first and most famously made by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the superstar investigators we've all been talking about. So it was used as The Conjuring's primary source material. The Perron girls never fully bought this theory, and after much research and discussion, they began to disagree. So some of them believe it was Bathsheba, other people in the family don't, so they have a whole disagreement about the whole experience. But,
really?
Yeah, so the spirit that was coming after my mother clearly had a broken neck. Bathsheba died in 1885 of a stroke, but this is like one of the things she might have died from a stroke. That's
gotcha.
Historical records said she died from a stroke. Other people believe it was a hanging. It was a whole thing. Which, the stroke theory would make sense for the people who were talking about the paralysis and the, like, being...
Yeah.
Turned into stone, having a stroke. That would make sense.
Math is math.
Math is math in there. So she died in 1885, but Mrs. John Arnold did hang herself in the barn in 1797. So that's another person people believed it could have been John Arnold.
Right.
In 1797. She was 93 years old, and it was right after her husband had died. Andrea says she believes Mrs. Arnold wanted to take Carolyn's place at the head of the household. So clearly she would want to get her out of the way so she could then be the head of the household.
Be the supreme, yeah.
She wanted to be head. So, I always found it interesting that the same spirit that was attacking her was embracing him, and at the same time that their marriage was slowly but surely crumbling. So, it's almost like This honestly reminds me of Danielle's P4.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not,
her senior thesis
yeah, I don't think
film.
it's out anywhere. If it is, hey. But it's called See Me, and it has a similar concept of, like, trying to get rid of the head of the household to be with the husband.
To be with the husband and, like, do those things.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't think Danielle's seen the Conjuring movies either, too.
And I don't even think this is part of the Conjuring movie either. So, well, not that I know of, at least. So trying to get with... But it's just funny that it lines up. I'll have to tell her tomorrow. But yeah,
it's just so interesting. Like, so many of these cases could be their own, like, movies and have been their own movies, or even just, like, haven't even been, like, talked about in the franchise. I just find that so intriguing.
It's just a very detailed franchise, and, like, also something I'm not going to bring up because, like, it's not. I don't think it's actually part of this case necessarily. But in the movie, a big part of the Conjuring, the first movie, is like the Annabelle doll as well in the Conjuring movies. Yeah. But that's something we'll either do a whole other case on, or maybe like a mini mystery on the TikTok.
Okay.
Just because it's a smaller thing, but that was also represented in this movie. So we're not going to talk about it, but it does exist, and I do acknowledge it exists. Yeah. Hashtag Annabelle. So, so this thing's taking over the wife, slowly, like watching everything crumble just so she can take over and be with the woman's husband.
Yeah.
So half a century removed from the great trauma that marked their childhood, the Perron girls are still divided about the house, with Cindy and Christine vowing to never go back. Whoa. And Andrea and Nancy still with the fondness in their hearts. So another sibling, Nancy, also has a fond memory of the house.
But a few of them are like, that house is evil. I never want to go back
Cindy
there.
and Christine are like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So Nancy obviously experienced stuff as well, but like she probably had a similar sort of scary experience as Andrea, that she was like, but I like them. Yeah. But I'm like, can you not also see that they weren't good?
Yeah, can you not see that, like, they were hurting your siblings or, like, your family?
Your mother, by her head
you
on
watched
the concrete
this,
floor.
like, thing happen.
But they're like, oh, but they're cute. So, but the family unit remains as close as ever was in every other way. Living at the farm, Andrea reflects, brought us all closer. The most important lesson that we learned was to live fearlessly. Not recklessly, but fearlessly, because there's no reason to fear death. We know that life goes on. So she has a very positive mindset on this, and that could also be her working through her childhood trauma and trying to see the good in it, or it could just be like, that's just how her outlook on life is. Yeah. But she's seeing it as a reason, like, we shouldn't fear death because at least we know that life goes on after death. There's not just some black void, in her opinion.
That's a very interesting way of, like, looking at it, but I can see, like, how that's comforting to her.
Yeah, like, she knows if something were to happen that she has peace in whatever she believes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, even though the family left when Andrea was 21, she has always felt drawn to what she refers to as the farmhouse. So, their old farmhouse when they were kids.
Oh, the farmhouse. That's such a, like, a creepy, like, dark, like... farmhouse. I don't know.
Farmhouse, and that's eerie.
Because it was out out in the country, wasn't it? Like they were the only house in the surrounding area.
In Rhode Island, just a little patch of land.
Yeah. Because Rhode Island is like very like, not country like country, but like.
But it's like pretty country. It's
like pretty country, like. Oh, I'm the only house in miles.
In miles, they can't hear you scream for miles.
Tee. And there's comfort in that.
There's comfort in knowing I won't be heard. So every now and then, it just reaches out to me and says, "Come home," is what Andrea says.
No, like even though he left the house, like she hears someone being like, "Come home."
Yeah, it's almost like, but I just cannot stop thinking of the correlations with Hill House. Yeah, like the "come home," like even in the book, that's a big
thing. They gotta use like a big inspiration.
Yeah,
like,
but in the book too, like it's just weird that the book, whenever I have to look up what year that book was written, but that's a whole thing of like, "Come home, Nell," like "Come home." And it's trying to keep her. The house is trying to keep her.
Like,
so it sounds a lot like the farmhouse.
Come back, we miss you. Like, no, like, we're not.
Yeah, so then if you die, you're basically stuck there with the ghosts. Like, they want you to stay with them and be a part of what they're building. This horrifying empire. So when The Conjuring premiered, Andrea saw Lorraine Warren, who was with her husband Ed, and they're the main characters of the movie, and then its two sequels. Now deceased, they were among the best-known paranormal investigators in the late 20th century. Wow. So they're both passed away now, but Ed, a self-described demonologist, and Lorraine, a clairvoyant and medium. Andrea told Lorraine Warren that she'd like to get the farmhouse back someday, but Warren gave her an ominous warning. If you go back, you won't get out of it alive, she said. Wow. But I'm like, having a medium tell you that, like, why would you not believe that? And she literally went back after being told this. I'm like, girl. Yeah. Oh no, she's warning you.
Like there are so many signs pointing you away from this.
Yeah, please. For real. Like, get some help, girl. So the house has since been bought by Corey and Jennifer Heinzen, who rent it out overnight to people who stay themselves as paranormal investigators.
I've heard of that.
So yeah, so that's like one of the most recent people that owned it. Since then, it's been passed along. And we'll get into that too.
Did you show me a video of them going to that house and renting it out?
Yes, I did. You know who did it? Sam and
Colby. Oh my gosh.
For those of you who don't know, I am a big fan of them. Nadia introduced me to them, and the first video I ever watched by them was the Conjuring House, and that like made me go down this whole rabbit hole and watching all their stuff, and I actually bought their merch. I bought their merch.
Is it already here?
No, I haven't gotten it yet. I'm going to show you. It's really cute. It's fall colors. But yeah, if you guys want like a better understanding of like what the house looks like, and they do
watch their video.
Yeah, watch their video. It's actually so scary.
It did look cool. I mean, I passed out because we had a little
need to actually watch it because it freaked me out so bad. When I initially had watched it, I was with Nadia and she fell asleep, and I had to watch it at like 2 or 3 a.m. The witching hour, watching The Conjuring, a house with them literally going in the basement and doing all this crazy seance stuff.
Oh my gosh.
By myself in the middle of the night with Nadia sleeping. I was horrified.
That's like, have we talked about this on the podcast? I don't think we have, about how you showed me Hereditary during witching hour.
Yeah.
And then you were like, well, good night.
Good night. What, I put on Jeopardy or something?
Yeah, you turned on Jeopardy and called it a day.
I said, it's okay, Logan, don't be scared. Here's Jeopardy. That movie messed me up real bad.
And Danielle was with us too, but she was already
she
like
slept
passed
through, like, the whole thing.
She slept through all of Hereditary.
Has she watched it since? We should watch it when I come over.
Oh my god, watch it! Oh my god.
She needs to watch, or at least some point. I'll watch it with her. Maybe I'll have her watch it before you come home from your concert.
Oh my god.
I think I'll do that because she needs to experience that horrifying movie.
I come back and I'm like, hey, and she's like,
I experienced everything. That's a movie I also watched with Nadia for the first time.
Oh my god.
She and I have so many shared horror experiences with each other, and I love the most of it.
Oh my god.
But yeah, this was the warning. If you go back to the house, you're not going to get out alive. So that was a crazy warning.
So don't go back.
Don't go back. It was bought by these people for paranormal investigations. Okay, Sam and Colby went. Go and watch them. The Heinsohns recently put the house on the market, and their asking price was $1.2 million. And Andrea obviously couldn't buy that. She wanted to
have the house,
she had
doesn't
interest,
have that
but
money.
$1.2 million is way out of her range.
Yeah.
And she's quoted saying, "I'll let the universe decide whether this is our last visit to the farmhouse," she said. "I don't need to own it now. It owns me."
Oh,
Girl.
Andrea has such a connection to this.
Andrea, I'm concerned. It's almost like it's manipulating her into wanting to be there.
Kind of like the witch too, like how she might have been like kind of manipulated by
and like you never know, maybe like something has shifted her mind, or maybe she genuinely does have a fond memory of it, but it's just strange.
I definitely don't want to sit here and say like this person who is still like alive right now is like possessed by the devil, but it's
I don't believe she's possessed by the devil.
No, but it is very interesting if that's like her response to everything that she went through, like
this house owns me.
Deep love and
just that it literally could be like, I love this house, and I'd be like, okay, weird, but like you do you, girl, like I'm glad you come to peace with it. But the fact that she was like, oh, I don't need to own the house, but it does own me, it's like you're basically saying, yeah, I don't care if it owns my soul, like that kind of vibe. And
it's
that's
kind of inviting more in.
I'm like, don't invite it, there's too much happening. But so that's that whole part. And then we're going to do a little interview thing that Lorraine Warren, when she was alive, did a little thing about this. So we'll do a little more. Ed Warren died in 2006, but Lorraine was 86 when she did this. And she was actually a consultant on the film The Conjuring, so she was alive at that point. I'm going to look up when Lorraine died for my brain.
Wow.
She died in 2019, so she lived.
Oh, so fairly recent.
She lived a lot of life, that woman.
Wow.
But yeah, she was a consultant on the film. And she insisted that many of the movie's harrowing moments actually happened. So she believes a lot of it was factual. And, like, there's evidence saying, like, the kids also thought a lot of it was factual. But obviously it was played up for media, too. And they didn't include a lot because obviously we talked about it was 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-hour movie. So they obviously couldn't do everything. And the first that went on there were just so incredibly frightened. The things that happened there, she said, were very frightening. She was citing her own investigation nearly 40 years ago and says, "It still affects me to talk about it today." When she was alive, she was saying it's still something that she can't shake. Yeah,
and that's so interesting that, like, they've done, like, 100 cases before, and, like, that one, like, just keeps an impact on her.
Yeah, like it clearly
it was all fun and games until it wasn't.
Like, for people who are skeptics, it's like, it clearly did some damage on a lot of people, regardless of what you're believing. Something had psychological effects on all these people.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just brush that off as nothing. There was something doing something, regardless of what you're thinking.
Exactly.
But neurologist Stephen Novella, president of the New England Skeptical Society, who had investigated the Warrens in the past, said he is far from convinced. The Warrens are good at telling ghost stories, says Novella, of the couple who were also involved in other popular hauntings known in pop culture. You could do a lot of movies based on the stories they have spun, but there's absolutely no reason to believe them, and there's no legitimacy to them. So nonetheless, Andrea Perron, the oldest of the 5 girls, obviously we went through her whole thing, that she obviously believes all this stuff happened, and, like, there's sources from all of her sisters, from her family, so I believe, for Mr. Skeptic, there's legitimacy in all of their experiences. So that's me to Mr. Skeptic guy. And then, for the interview, Lorraine answers some of these questions. So the first question was, why didn't the family just leave the house? And her response was, rather than the relatively short, intense haunting depicted in The Conjuring, Perron says her family lived in the 14-room farmhouse from 1970 until 1980. While many spirits in the house were harmless, some, like one called Bathsheba, were very angry. Whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be the mistress of the house, and she resented the competition my mother posed for that position. That says Perron. So, when asked why the family endured the spirit invaders, who stunk of rotting flesh and would arrive at 5:15 most mornings to lift beds, Perron says, I hear that question most every day. I think we were supposed to have this experience and share it with the world.
Whoa.
So she thought, like, there was a meaning to all the stuff that happened. Like, it was meant to provide legitimacy to people who've had these experiences.
We were meant to see the evils of this world.
Yeah.
But also, again, like, at the same time, if it is this really nice farmhouse that is now going for, like, $1.2 million, it's like, imagine how much it was to, like, buy, like, before all this stuff happened, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's
like,
an investment.
And it might have been cheaper at that time, but then again, we know that, like,
they probably still had to take out a loan.
It was probably still a lot
sure.
for a young family to afford. Like, they probably weren't well off.
Especially with 5 kids.
Yeah, like, they didn't have a bunch of money, probably. So, this was
it's not, like, as easy as, like, up and leaving.
Yeah.
Like, you're a family of 7.
And they even talked about they couldn't leave for all these years after because of financial reasons. Like, they couldn't leave.
It's not as simple as just leaving. If you have the option to, do it. But, like,
good for you, but not a lot of people have that privilege of just being able to get up and go.
Yeah.
So a lot of these interviews have, like, different, like, Lorraine is talking, but she'll also cite Perron, or there's stuff from
like
Andrea.
What they've said before. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're wondering why it's jumping back and forth. Why did they go into the cellar is the next question. Perron then says the family stayed away from the dirt-floored cellar, which was a spirit hotspot, except when the house's heating equipment would fail, forcing Roger to make repairs. He would go downstairs and feel the cold, stinking presence beside him, so that's where he would feel the presence by himself, stinking into standing beside him. Did the exorcism attempted in the film really take place? The Warrens, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga in the film, made frequent trips to the house in 1974 to investigate, but Lorraine insisted she and her husband would never try an exorcism, which would be performed by a Catholic priest. However, a seance allegedly caused Carolyn Perron to be temporarily possessed, and when Andrea claims she secretly watched. So, I guess Andrea wasn't, like, actively standing there watching. She was watching from the side because she wasn't really supposed to be down there. It was, like, a secretive thing of her watching all this happen when she was really young. So can you imagine, like, seeing something like that and you were not supposed to be down there seeing that?
Yeah.
Like, you're so little and you just happen to see that.
Yeah.
It won't be well. But she saw that happening, secretly watching. So it was actually a seance and not an exorcism because they were not a priest.
Yeah, I wouldn't want the kids there either. Like, why would you, like, leave them, like, in the room for something like that? But, like, I can imagine them, like, wanting to sneak and know. Like,
and just being like, what's going on? Like, that, even just, like,
and if
kids
you play
are so
it up
curious.
If you play it up as, like, such a serious thing, kids have that curiosity.
Yeah.
If it were me, I would have been like, I'm gonna sneak my butt down these steps and see what's going on.
Also, like, all of them seeing this stuff, I feel like I'd want to know what was happening too, like getting more information on why I'm seeing this stuff around the house, why I'm being dragged out of my bed, why.
Well, like, when you're a kid, your imagination runs even, like, wilder too. Like, I don't know if you've had this before, but, like, you kind of see the world sometimes as, like, a narrative, like, movie.
Yeah.
Or, like, a TV show, or, like, oh, I'm doing this, like, huge thing, this is, like, crazy.
Yeah.
So it's, like, I can imagine they were, like, I want those answers, like you said.
Like, they just really want to know what's happening, and it makes sense that they would see it so crazy. So, Andrea then recalls, I thought I was going to pass out. My mother began to speak a language not of this world in a voice not her own. Her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room. So this is stuff that was actually seen by her, and then obviously that's also depicted in the movie a little differently, but it still happened in real life and in the film, of like her levitating in the chair and being thrown across the room.
That is so wild, just the parallels that come with this. I just find that so interesting how they like all shape together like that.
Yeah. So the next question that was asked was, what do they say to non-believers? So Perron, who has written her family's story in 3 self-published books, says she is never surprised when people don't believe their tale. Both my mother and I would just as soon swallow our tongue than tell a lie, she says. People are free to believe whatever they want to believe, but I know what we experienced. So Perron's opinion was like, she knows if you want to believe that they lie, whatever. She knows she would never lie in her heart. Her mom would never, like, they'd soon as bite their tongue.
I'm really happy to, like, hear her say that, because that goes back to what we were talking about, how, like, you and I have had experiences, and it's like, you know what you know.
Like, you're confident in what you experienced, and, like, regardless of what anyone has to say about it, you know what happened to you, and you better stick by it. And I'm proud of her for, after all these years, finding closure and everything, and also just being like, if you don't believe me, that's on you, but I know what happened to me, and I'm sure of it. So that was, like, the end of that interview, and that was a little bit of Lorraine, a little bit of Perron mixed in. And then now we're going to get on to just the house today. What's happening with the house now?
Oh.
So obviously Corey and Jennifer Heisen, the people we talked about before, bought the home at 1677 Round Top Road in June 2019. So they bought it in 2019. We've had doors open.
Birthday.
Oh my god! What if it wasn't her birthday? That'd be cute. June 2019. So they had to say, we've had doors open on their own, footsteps, disembodied voices, electronic voice phenomena, and some awesome spirit box sessions, Corey told Insider News in her 2019 interview. So the Heinzens used the property as a business where the visitors could conduct overnight paranormal investigations, as I brought up before, per the Conjuring House website, so you can always go check out their website for the whole house. They charged $125 per person for an overnight investigation that would start at 6 p.m. and lasted until 8 a.m. in the morning.
I could not do that.
So I remember, like, wanting to do this with Nadia, but it got sold in that time.
Would you do it now? Like, if you had the chance, would you do it again?
I don't know that I'd stay the night. Maybe go there for a little bit, but I'd just be too scared.
But you'd leave, like, you'd book at the Comfort Inn.
Yeah,
or,
like I couldn't stay all night. Like, I'd be too freaked out. I might even I'd be there for like an hour and I'd get too scared. I'm just really afraid of things latching on like that, especially in a house like that. I'm a fearful person.
I love that we're like mystery people, but you and I also get like a little freaked out, like a little easy. Like, we were freaked out like during the last door a little bit.
Yeah.
We were with like 4 other people when we investigated
scary.
that.
Like, I can talk a big game, but I don't want nothing coming at me. Like, that's scary as heck. So they would charge all these people to stay overnight, which I would never do because I'd be so scared. But they decided to let the property go due to Corey's health problems and the stress of managing the business. So 2 years after buying the house, they put it up for sale for $1.2 million, as we've talked about, and they have actually sold the property, and they ended up getting $1.5 million instead of $1.2 million.
Wow.
So they upped it a little bit. Like, they got more than they asked for, which is great. So now the new owner of the home is a real estate developer named Jacqueline Nunez, who was represented by Ricardo Rodriguez and Bethany Eddy of Coldwell Banker Realty, whatever it's called.
Okay.
So they had to say, we are thrilled for our client. She has been very excited about this home from day one. Not only is this a record-breaking sale for the market, but it is a significant home with a unique history, the buyer's agents told Insider. It is a 40-minute drive from Providence, and the remote location is part of the reason why Nunez fell in love with the house. So she had to say, even without the paranormal activity, this would be a place that I would have loved to own. Stone walls, a river that runs through it, the woods, a footbridge, an open field. It's just a gorgeous property, Nunez told Insider. I believe with the happenings at this house, it really gives an opportunity to study the activity and to communicate with the dead. So she's all for it. She's like, it's beautiful. Look at this property. Wow. But I don't mind talking to some dead people. Like, I'm like, girl, you better be careful playing with that.
She sounds very passionate about paranormal activity.
Yeah, she's like, it's gonna be so fun. So although she's a real estate developer in Boston, Nunez stressed that she did not purchase the property to create any new developments. So it was a personal purchase for me, she said. To ensure what the next owner lives up to their expectations, the Hineses insisted on interviewing her before she was allowed to purchase the home, Nunes had said.
Smart.
So they wanted to find someone that was going to keep and grow the business that they had started, which I absolutely intended to do, Nunes said. So she wanted to grow their business a little bit, meaning that she was probably going to have people come over for investigations like the old couple did that lived there in 2019. The Hineses also wanted to make sure that whoever bought the house did not live in it year-round, because they didn't even live there year-round because of everything that was happening in the house. They didn't feel safe in the house to do that. So it's kind of something they would just rent to other people, and they'd be there every once in a while.
Wow.
So she said, I didn't sign anything that limits me in terms of how often I can be there. But the reason for that is because the energy there is so strong that it can begin to affect people who are in the house for an extended period of time. So then 1 week after closing on the property, Nunes had already had a first-hand encounter with the paranormal activity in the house. So she's there one week, and of course things are already happening, because why would they not be?
I'm surprised nothing didn't happen in like the first 24 hours, to be honest.
A week? I mean, maybe like little things that she barely, or just didn't want to acknowledge.
Yeah, like, oh, like, that's just my brain playing tricks on me.
Yeah, like it'd be easier to brush some stuff off. So she says, I was with the ghost hunting group last night. We were sitting upstairs and they were trying to talk to some of the spirits, she said. There were loud and heavy footfall on the staircase, and we could have sworn that there was usually someone else in the house. There was actually someone else in the house, so she believed that, like, these footsteps seemed so real that she thought someone had gotten into her house and was walking around.
Oh, like a robbery.
Yeah.
Or, like, breaking in.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think that's kind of fair, though, because, like, I feel like a lot of kids would try to break in and be like, oh, let's go to the Conjuring House.
Like, that'd be so cool.
Right.
So she, like, tried to just think that there was someone else in the house, but there actually wasn't after further investigation, and she said it was pretty amazing to hear that it was actually, like, nothing. And I'm like, girl, you're way too confident and excited to be hearing stuff like that in your house. And also the fact that she was like, oh, yeah, like, regardless, like, I can stay in there however long I want. I don't care what they say. Like, oh. Like, it seems like she wants to stay there full time. I'm like, oh. Girl, please don't.
Like, babe, no.
But, she then goes on to say, I mean, I certainly expect that things will startle me, that they will happen, but I don't believe that the energy in the house is evil at all, she said. So she doesn't think it's evil at all. I'm like, so a whole possession isn't evil to you? What about the witch? Yeah. What about, the kids trying to get drowned in the bathtub? What about literally everything that has happened to the Perron family? She's like, no, it's fine. Or, like, all the evil happenings that happened in the past or supposedly happened from Bathsheba, like, doing these awful things to her kids. Like,
sounds like she didn't do as much research as I thought she might have. I thought she would have been, like, a very passionate person.
Well, maybe she did, and she was like, well, I don't think anything evil lingers. Like, maybe that's her thought behind it, but I'm like, if there were something evil, it would linger, though, regardless. Like, there's going to be some aftermath left in that
you think
house.
After that family left, it's like, she's, but she was just like, alright, I'll go away now.
It's just fine. She just believes it's all clear. I'm like, but you're still hearing stuff. There's something there.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it's going to be all cute and fun and kind. Which also brings me back to, like, Andrea and, like, the other sister who are like, oh, I love that house. I don't think it's bad.
I was like, what?
It's like,
me when I'm lying?
Me when I'm lying? But I'm like, is it because people are being manipulated by the presence of the house to believe it's good? Like, that's my only concern. So that's basically the gist of it. And I want to know, Logan, what are your thoughts? What do you think is true? What do you think, if any of it is fake, what do you think is fake? What are your opinions?
Ooh.
What do you believe Bathsheba was? Do you believe all of this stuff is factual?
Obviously, the Bathsheba stuff was factual for the most part, right? Because there's documentation of, like, everything that she did.
Yeah. Like, what parts do you believe in her? Do you think...
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like with this podcast, I feel like I'm very much devil's advocate. I like to look at the skeptical side, but then also like the fun paranormal side. But I think I'm honestly, for this one, gonna like put all my chips into the paranormal stuff. I think a lot of this stuff and like the curse of what's happening to that house is real. Like, you just don't have a house that's been there since like the 1800s that has all of this weird energy in it, like demonic things, and also like this family just seeing all that stuff and people not believing them even when they haven't had their own experience, to be able to connect with them on that level. I fully believe them in everything like that, so I 100% think that house is fully possessed, whether that's like there's some good spirits, some bad, if it's Bathsheba. I do think maybe the only one skeptic thing, as I could say, is I think with anything that is paranormal, people will take it and run a mile with it.
Yeah.
Like, try to find ways to make new stories or lies or even, like, try to capitalize on it in some way. Like, I'm sure there's people who've gone and done, like, the Conjuring tour and have, like, come back with stories that are, like, nonsensical.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like, just because it is such a, juggernaut of a paranormal thing that we have here in the States. So, yeah, I'm gonna put all my chips in there and say paranormal through and through. Some people probably just like to amp it up a bit, even if they didn't see anything.
And do you believe the Warrens were factual in their statements as well? Like, some people think that they were obviously, like, trying to make up stuff and whatever. Do you think that they were also factual in what we've heard?
No, I think they are factual in, like, what we've heard. I think, like, the exorcism thing is so hard because, like, you weren't there for it and, like, you couldn't have known. But, like, I do think, like, if they've set their whole lives out to, like, do these cases and do these things in, like, what was her name? Elizabeth Warren? Lorraine. Yeah. Lorraine Warren. Elizabeth Warren's the...
She's...
axe person, right? No.
An axe person?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
There's an axe person. Anyway.
Lizzie Borden?
Yes! That one!
I was like, who are you trying to connect here?
It rhymed. Lorraine Warren, I think just her being like, I don't even really want to talk about it up to, like, 2019. Even though, like, she was consulted for, like, the movie and stuff. It just is very, like... That happened over 50 years ago, and she still doesn't like talking about it.
And it sticks with her to this day. Like,
there's just, even if it was some weird, like, phenomenon where it was not spirits at all, which is kind of bull, you cannot deny the energy in what has happened in that house is undeniably creepy and just plain out weird.
Yeah, and I feel like even for people who would try to blame it on something else, like, the only thing I could see, if it were a short-term thing, like maybe blaming hallucinogenic effects on something like a carbon monoxide leak or some sort of thing like that. Yeah. Some people try to chalk stuff up like that to carbon monoxide, but obviously
10 years of carbon monoxide.
Yeah, that could not be true because they would have died fairly recently after they would have moved in if it were something like that. Because I know some people try to use that as an excuse for old houses and stuff, that you can be hallucinating from things like that. I've heard that.
There 10 years.
Yeah, there's no way. But in terms of my opinions and thoughts, I believe that Bathsheba was real, regardless of what exactly was going on with her. I believe that maybe she wasn't involved in witchcraft, and that's why she was so susceptible to, like, all of these evil influences, and just kind of accepted herself to go under these influences of, like, Satan and stuff. So, like, whatever she would have done to, like, her children, regardless if that was one or if that was more from what other statistics have said, I believe that she's a witch. She did that awful stuff and then ended her life, regardless if that was in whatever way that happened. Yeah. I believe that happened, and I believe her spirit stayed at the house and is working along Satan and is creating evil stuff in the house. And that's why I believe, like, when people say the house isn't evil, I'm like, there's definitely evil there. That's not something you can get rid of casually, and they only did a seance. Unless someone has exorcised that house more recently, that evil's still going to be there.
There's just so many layers to this that it's impossible to deny that something is up there.
It's impossible to deny, and I do think it's evil. I think Ed and Lorraine Warren, like, the stuff they went through is also factual because they were there. They obviously didn't see the extent of what the people, like the parents, experienced because they literally lived there. But what the Warrens experienced was definitely something I believe is factual. Andrea saw it, her mother experienced it. Like, I think it's factual. And even if the Conjuring movie did take some stuff up to, like, liberties of the movie, that's half the fun of a movie. And it's okay if it wasn't completely factual because it was a film. But,
I think for me, I'm really glad we did this case because, like, I feel like I have a lot more. I literally said this to you before we started the episode. I was like, I bet we're going to go out of this on the other side and I'm going to be more emotionally invested in it. Yeah. And I gotta say, I absolutely am. Like, I feel way more like I understand this story and, like, where it came from, especially knowing all the Bathsheba backstory now. Yeah. I feel like it'll make even, like, watching the movie or doing the other Warren file cases, like, a lot more, like, interesting and, like, fun, you know, just to kind of like go in and be like, now that I have this understanding of them, like it'll be
like you
a
really know
fun
who the
thing to
Warrens
do.
are. And like in the future episodes, I probably am not going to go into such full detail of who the Warrens were, but I kind of wanted that to be the introduction to who these people are. So when we do continue these cases,
this is our episode 50. We had to go at it with a bang.
She's number 50, but I'm going to head to the conclusion now. So, in conclusion, the Conjuring House clearly has been regarded as a very deeply haunted place experienced by many. Whether those hauntings are associated with Bathsheba or completely different entities that were also brought up all together, these hauntings definitely ring true for those who experienced them firsthand. Although the Perron story is now in the past, this house continues on its ghostly legacy by still being a prime candidate for thrill-seeking ghost hunters longing for the truth. So I guess this real truth behind this Warren file of the Perron family haunting. I was like, the Warren family haunting. Yes. So this Warren file of the Perron family haunting will forever remain a mystery. Yeah. Heck yeah. So thank you all for joining this journey, and we will continue these Warren files down the road in the near future. Hopefully when we get into the fall too, we'll be able to have some of these spooky stories for you. But thank you for joining along.
Yes.
We love you the most, and thank you for joining us for the 50th episode.
This was so fun, and I had a great time with it. And we will see you guys next week for my case. It's a little weird having Tiffany go back to back, but I will be back again with some fun, terrifying story for everybody.
Logan will be back within the summer tape, so that'll be the fun little thing we'll go back to. Yeah. But the Warren Files will be here. We will be making more stuff eventually within our Campfire Stories little thing as well. Yes. So just stay tuned. We love you guys, and thank you.
A lot of exciting things in the work.
Thank you for supporting us. We love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.